Oi, oi! It is Aintree Festival coming up. We have the final declaration for Thursday, day one of the three-day meeting, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I'm going to try and concisely cover those three days for you now in a quick preview video. Obviously, having the final declaration for the Thursday means you're going to get the information. You're going to get the ones I quite like. Friday, Saturday, we still need to know final field, so they'll be a bit bitty, but there's a bit of other content that will be coming out. Doing a couple of bits for Colossus with Daryl, so like more fancy selections will be in there. Fields are about the right size where you can really whittle it down to one or just two. That's when the pools can come in quite handy, because if you do see the race between two of the runners in there, but you can't really split them, sometimes there's value to punt, sometimes there's value to play the pair. But without further ado, let's just smash on with the Thursday stuff, because I am buzzing for Aintree. Had a nice little break after Cheltenham. I've not been keeping too much of an eye on the race, in truth be told. Fairyhouse, I had a bit of a look at it. A couple of horses there that I fancied. Almost did a preview for it, but there was only really two horses I did fancy. I won't even mention them now because it would be after timing. Neither of them won, but they both ran second at big prices. But hey, what's the point in telling you that now, because it's gone? So Aintree, Thursday, kick-off. This is the beautiful thing about like Aintree as a meeting, right? I love it anyway. You know, I'm a bit of a graded snob. We've only got one handicap on day one, so this is a bit of me, isn't it? So race one, first day, is the Manifesto Novices Chase. So it's a grade one over 2.5. This is a nice trip for runners. The track as well, with it being flat, the ground being fairly quick, I suspect it's going to be. I know they've been watering, or at least I believe they've been watering. It'll just be a nice race. And looking at the seven runners we've got in there, of course, that's going to ruin it for some of your each-way punters out there, but we're going balls deep, aren't we? Let's try and be confident in as many selections as we can. But again, I do find, before I go on to like actually previewing it, I do find that over the few days, right, it's easy to try and get stuck into every single race, but there isn't always a betting opportunity in every race. You're far better off trying to pick out the ones you really fancy, even if that means you're only going to really be left with 2-3 decent bets for the few days. Some of these races we can look at, and you'll talk yourself into backing something when you know it's fairly open. So let me just put my views across, see how you guys feel with it. I know lots of you know just as much, if not more than me. So what you guys fancy in the comments would be helpful. Anyhow, race one, Thursday, Manifesto Novices Chase. Of course, it's important to remember here, we talk about 5-year-olds records in the Cheltenham Festival, how they get that, the weight for age allowance changes a little bit, doesn't it? They still receive a little bit of weight when it comes to Cheltenham. Not so much here. 5-year-olds did win at Clarkham a couple of years ago. 6-year-olds have the best record in this particular race. Like, I can't remember what it is, like 7 of the last 8 have been 6-year-olds. And that isn't the only line to be using for a race like this, but it's a good little in anyway, isn't it? Adds like fruit to the theory of the horse that I like, which is Fusel Raffles. He was a horse that I marked down as a horse to follow. I said when he steps up and trip, that will suit him better. I think he does need the better ground as well, which has been talked about by the yard quite a few times. He did win on slower ground at Cheltenham the time before he came second in the Marsh. Obviously, Envoy didn't win his race there, but that's rock solid form for the middle distance trip. Best form bar none in this field. And again, like I say, the ground's going to be right up his street. So Fusel Raffles for me should be fab in the race. He's not going to be fab, I don't think. I think Hitman probably is going to be. He is that 5-year-old. Look, I definitely think Hitman has got a load of ability, but he was beat by All Mankind, and I know All Mankind's a nice horse as well, but he was beat by All Mankind there in that Henry VIII Novices Chase. But that was a field where Phoenix Ware was in there, Eldorado ran, and they're both going to reoppose here. The 3-4-year-olds in that race all at the race by the scruff of the neck. Now, I don't think Phoenix Ware, Eldorado really ran their race, so I don't know how literally you can take it. Hitman obviously failed the race where Sporting John came from out the clouds to win it, and he was travelling really nicely there, but he did make the mistake, didn't he, to go and fall, and then obviously he's come out and won since Newbury in an absolute nothing race. Now, look, this Hitman does look like he's an absolute beast. I just think that maybe this is a bit of a deeper race than people will give it credit for. Fusel Raffles is a really, really nice horse. So, like, I could see either of the pair of those winning. You can never really be that confident with Fusel Raffles when it comes to the top grade. Like, you kind of feel like he's the type of horse that will probably always find 1-2 good Hitman may be that one, but I think I'd be more swaying towards Fuser Raffles. Eldorado Allen, I was hoping they were going to run in Grand Annual. They did end up making the right choice when the field was so small to go for the Arkle. Admittedly, they weren't going to get anywhere near Shishkin, but we saw what happened with Envoy. Eldorado ended up second in that race. Had anything happened, he could have been a Grade 1 winner. Step up in trips should suit him. He is a 7-year-old. I feel like the extra trip will probably help. I think on the ground and stuff, it will help him as well. I just don't think he would be up to this standard. Like, he's a very nice horse, but I'd like to think there'll be something a little bit better than him in here. Phoenix Way is another one that's a really nice horse. It sounds a bit stupid considering the horse obviously he pulled up on his last occasion and he won a few times before that, but he's kind of hard to keep right and keep sound clearly because he's not had that much racing for being an 8-year-old. And it might just be the case that he's going to prove a little bit tricky to catch right. Now, that Huntingdon Handicap hurdle that he won has come back at the beginning, or just over a year ago. That was over 3 miles. His Chase debut was over 2 miles, and he went and did what he did there. And that was really, really eye-catching. So I don't think the Henry VIII Novices Chase at Sandown was particularly the right race for him. I think middle trip or 3 mile would have suited him. Like I would have had him down as more of an RSA type as the season went on. So this middle trip should suit him, and we know he's got bundles of ability. So like I wouldn't be wanting to back him, but you wouldn't really want to be laying him at anything like tall single figure prices. Protectorat was a horse that I thought, again, potentially could have been an RSA bound horse. I feel like he wants further. Ground and everything should suit. Same-ish connections as Hitman. Windop, tongue tie coming into here. So breathing's obviously been an issue. They've skipped Cheltenham purposely to come here fresh with the horse, much like they've done with Hitman. And that could prove a bit of a difference between how Fuser Raffles is going to perform back-to-back runs and how those two may go up against him. The Shunt is there, obviously picked up that £100,000 bonus. I can't have him, although like I think a few people probably would like him. Just goes to show that, and even Abacadabras, to be fair, on figures, they're all 150s horses, bar Phoenix Way. So it's a very competitive race. I would still think that Fuser Raffles is the one that I'd want to be on side of. Like, I think he'll be there or thereabouts. I wouldn't be bullish enough to say that I really, really fancy anything to win this race because you could see a few different results that are in there. But maybe the 6-year-old thing would sway me to look at Fusels and Protectorat. And I do think Hitman has got some ability. So those three would be the short list for me. I just think Fuser Raffles is a lot less complicated of a horse than the other two. Hitman we haven't seen enough of yet. But obviously did run so well in that Henry VIII. So you think he's got this in him. And you'd also think that he's got more to come. So the improvement to come through, all that sort of stuff. The tricky thing we've had in this particular race is that the course form isn't really there for previous runners. So sometimes we get some novice hurdlers that might have the form at Aintree, which could swing it in some favour. But look, it's a cracking race. Maybe one just to sit back, enjoy as a spectacle. But that is my thoughts on the race. Anyway, next race, the 220. It's going to be a similar thing for Harry Cobden and Paul Nicholls, I think, this week, that they've definitely teamed up a load of horses for Aintree. Skip Cheltenham with this particular festival in mind. Obviously, there's decent prize money there. I know the prize money in this side of the water is getting slated, but there's decent prize money on offer. It's Grade 1 wins as well. And Monmoral has been laid out for this. I like Monmoral. I think he's a beast. I thought that when he ran against Nasalam, I thought he was too big a price. This time round, you're looking at the betting, and it's going to be he's going to be fab, and Adagio, the runner-up in the Triumph, is going to be second fab in there. Now, when he ran against Nasalam, they were about 6-4 the pair. The prices did keep changing. I think they went off evens and 11-10 in the end. But Monmoral's going to be about that same sort of price to beat a horse that also beat Nasalam, albeit Monmoral beat Nasalam a lot more comfortably than you would say that Adagio did. I just think there's a bit of a price discrepancy in there that Adagio, like, I think it's a 2-horse race, quite simply put, and I feel like Adagio maybe is a bit overpriced. Not enough so that I want to be backing him, and also the fact that he has run at Cheltenham and then Monmouth will be coming here. But don't forget, Penton Hills did it, didn't he? Won the Triumph and then came over here. We do get some fresh horses that come quite nice to go and win when they come to Aintree to go and to run first time, especially in the juveniles. It looks fairly straightforward again. Like, I think market-ish is about right. Monmoral should be the horse that wins this. This is the horse that I thought after, even before Haydock, that he was going to win this juvenile race, and I thought I might get a bit of a price about him. I'm glad Adagio's in it because it makes it a proper race out of it. But it is a match between the two of them. I'm just fascinated to see how it goes. I couldn't be bullish enough to back Monmoral now, given Adagio's in there. But I do still think Monmoral's the one to beat. But it's just not worth it for me. The 250, the Betway Bowl, Tiger Roll. Go on, the Tiger. I mean, whether they're running him, I mean, I know O'Leary's saying he's running him in here because stick a finger up to the handicap and prove that he's not rated that figure. But part of it's maybe, I don't know, they won at Cheltenham, probably ruined the fact they didn't run him in the National, send him there. And for like the horse's CV, like the amount of times he's won at Cheltenham Festival, he's won 2 Grand Nationals. If he went and won a Betway Bowl at the age of 11, I would think it's on par with him going to win another national. Now, I know obviously to do that many nationals and the discipline and type of race that is, but this is a Grade 1 race. There was lots of talk about Tiger after his first Grand National, sticking in a Gold Cup, wasn't there? This is a weak and a poor man's Gold Cup. But I can't believe I'm making a bit of a case for Tiger Roll, to be honest, because I thought he was gone. Clearly wasn't at Cheltenham, but the cross country is a novelty race, isn't it? Look, Clan des Obeaux does deserve to be favourite in this race. Clan des Obeaux, I do think, is the most likely winner. Has run round it twice. But if you go back a few years, like he's a much different horse now than he was a few years back. So I think he's first run in the Betway Bar. I think he was third, and then maybe behind Mike Bright Native River, something like that. He, like on that sort of form with his progression that he's shown, you'd think he's the one to beat. I didn't think he ran too bad behind Frodon in the King George, despite the fact that we know that he's a sort of course and distance specialist. Semi-disappointed with him at Newbury. There's no getting away from that because you think he should have won that. But he's a horse that seems to like his racing. So I wonder whether Boxing Day wasn't quite right. February was more of a stepping stone into coming here. And this was always sort of in the back burner as the race to go to. I do think he's the type of horse that would be suited to Punchestown, but I don't think they'll be going over there with him for this season. I think Clan is the one to beat. First time cheap pieces are interesting more than anything, but the fact that he hasn't won rounder is still like a bit of a niggling doubt. Waiting Patient is the same, but best form is away from here. Clearly stays even better running the Gold Cup, sorry, the King George than what Clan des Obeaux did in there. But yeah, he's just been comfortably beaten around here before. And I know that's only one run, and I know that was the first time in cheap pieces, but I don't know. Something about him, and they're the two that should be really to the forefront of your mind in looking at this race to try and find the winner. Now, Native River, course and distance winner, fine fourth in a Gold Cup, but was well beaten. He was even beaten around this course earlier in the season. I couldn't have him, especially now the ground's that little bit quicker. When you start looking at some of the ones that are probably bigger prices, and they're bigger prices for a reason, the only one that, like, it sounds stupid because I'm really not a fan of this horse, is Mr. Fisher, right? And I feel a bit bad even talking about it anyway. Like, he was only 8-1 sent off in that Ryanair, and we know that was a pretty hot Ryanair, and horses got battered in there because of the speed that Allaho went off at. This horse was also battered when he ran around here in the bumper at Aintree. So although this is the type of track I suspect should suit him, flattish tracks, he was pants here in that bumper. So a couple of niggling doubts about there whether he's quite up to the grade. And let's be honest, as much as I said it's the poor man's Gold Cup, there's still some proper horses that are in here. I like the fact that he's running here. I think the step up and trip is well worth trying. Maybe he's just the sort of horse that could be like a fly in the ointment to go in there. But I think Clan des Obeaux, Waiting Patiently, are probably the ones to be looking at. But they've both got their own negatives about them. If you can get past the fact that those bits of course form, and let's be honest, that Min win where Waiting Patiently was well beaten, Min was just in another district that whole race. Clan des Obeaux, like I say, is a better horse probably last season than he is this season. And I don't know, that Haydock run at the beginning of the season was real good for him, wasn't it? Maybe that was just he was a bit too far forward, maybe a bit too much of a run before going into that King George. So I think Clan des Obeaux is the one to win this race. Probably still a backable price, to be honest. But yeah, it maybe looks the type of race that could be up for a bit of an upset. There's nothing really in there to make an upset, though, is there? And like Tiger Roll, you could give him a bit of a chance, but no, not for me. Then we've got the Aintree Hurdle, 2.5 miler. Now, this is a corking race. Lots of horses we look at throughout the season that we think this is the dream race for them. It's the middle distance between the 2 and the 3 mile trip. There's lots of horses that will be competitive at 2 miles, maybe competitive at 3 miles. But we know this middle trip is where they need it to be, like a Super Sunday, for example. This looks hot, and I'm talking proper hot in here as well. Now, Bouverdere is back in here. Like, you couldn't say that Bouverdere hasn't got a chance. The only slight niggle I have with Bouverdere is that he was so good in the race when he beat Petit Mouchouin. That was a battling race. So that was the 2 mile race that he ran in there. It was a real battling performance there where he beat him over 2 miles. Then he came and won the Aintree hurdle after when he battered My Tentacles. That was after he battered him at Cheltenham. So he was coming in there with decent form. It was the novice hurdly one, wasn't it? But over 2 miles. Then he got beat by Super Sunday. The one that I talked about that is that middle distancey horse. And that was after he came back from a fall at Cheltenham. I just feel a little bit like Bouvet, when he's at the top of his game, is a grade 1 horse. He's a champion hurdler, isn't he? When he's not at the top of his game, he's worth taking on a little bit. But you'd think price-wise, 11 runners in it, muggy each way bet, like he'll be there or thereabouts, wouldn't he? So not that that's the way that I'm inclined, but like there or thereabouts, Bouvet there, stranger things would have happened. So you give him a tiny bit of a squeak. McFabulous is one from a long time out of the season. Even right at the beginning of the season, you'd have said this is the perfect race for him. You can't really sway away from that now, although the fact that it does look a bit of a deeper race. Like even on official figures, if you take Milner's Bank out of it, or Miller's Bank, sorry, the rest are 150s, and there's only one 160s horse in it, which is Silver Streak. Again, he possibly could be suited by this step up in trip, but I don't think so in this type of class. Song for Someone skipped Cheltenham to be able to come here. Probably looks a wise move for freshness. But Jason the Militant's another one that was toyed about with going to the champion hurdle after a decent performance. There was no point really, was there, because they had Honeysuckle. I wondered if he was just going to go there as a bit of a pace angle for Honeysuckle. This trip would suit Jason the Militant better, I think. I think he's okay on better ground as well. He's probably the most interesting runner that I wouldn't have particularly seen at the beginning of the season as a horse that might be coming here. Abacadabras I do like. Slightly feel like this is a bit of an afterthought given that he fell in the champion hurdle, and maybe let's just see what he can do. But he is a nice horse. We know that he travels nicely, and I think the trip will probably be up his street. But the problem is you've got Abacadabras you can make a bit of a case for. Like I don't want to say, but Brewing Up a Storm you could give a bit of a squeak to. Bouvet should be thereabouts, but probably won't be winning it. But Fabulous again, thereabouts, maybe won't be winning it. Song for Someone, I don't really think that he's good enough. But there's a handful of horses that maybe could be in the frame that you could give a chance to. But pinning it down to a real confident opinion is really difficult, and especially considering you look at the official figures on these horses, it's hard to be overly confident or anything. Look, if I was forced, gun to head, to have a punt in here, I'd go McFabulous. I think everything's going to suit him. The track, the trip, the ground, the layoff, like everything's going to be in his favour. I think Jason the Militant's a real nice horse. I expect him to be thereabouts. Bouvet should probably be running into a place maybe, but then there are still some other class horses like an Abacadabras that could improve for the trip. Looks a fairly hot race, to be honest. Wouldn't be overly confident in punting in there, but what a spectacle. Then we've got Fox Hunters. David Maxwell's back. Cat Tiger looks primed and ready to go for this. You'd think they'd have one eye on sort of planning him doing something. I think what's really interesting is Billaway. Obviously, Patrick decided not to turn professional for the week at Cheltenham, which was never going to happen anyway. It was only just beaten at Cheltenham in that Fox Hunters, which was a much better effort than the year prior. Now I know Aintree wasn't here last year, so he wasn't able to come over for it. But the fact that they've come over here, Patrick obviously can ride. I'd still say that Billaway is the one to beat. It is a different trip here. It is shorter, but I think that will probably suit Billaway. I think he's got plenty of speed. There might be something at a bigger price that I don't know enough about this sphere of form to look into and say that I think it's going to go and win. But I do really think that the market's got it spot on. It's between Billaway and Cat Tiger. I do like Billaway. The thing is, this is the sort of race where you do need to dig into the form a bit because it is a different-ish trip to some of them. Some of them will want this step back down. And the Aintree fences do suit certain horses more than others. So I'm not really going to give you much more information than that, to be honest. So there you go, Fav and second Fav. 440. Grade 3, 2 mile handicap chase. Redemption time for Sully Dock. I'm buzzing that this horse is in here. 25s I saw in the week. I say in the week. Yesterday I looked before Dex. I thought we'll wait for Dex on this little bad boy. It's going to be a massive price. They've run him at the middle trip where I thought that was maybe the key to him. You go back to when he was running at Ascot before, even when he ran at Newbury behind Fanny and Destrabel, that was at 2 miles. The ground, I think, will be fine for him. I think he likes a bit of this quickie stuff anyway, or at least he handles it. He might need the juice in the ground, and maybe that's why they've been stepping up in trip when he's had the better surface. But we'll have to see. But Sully Dock at 33s, I think you might get 25s, 33s all day long. Would be a horse that I'm backing. You'll find some novelty each way place terms on this one as well. You probably get 6 considering there's 18 runners in there. I like Sully Dock. Jumping isn't always the greatest, but Sully Dock's a massive price. I will definitely be having a little tickle on him. Of the others that are doubted about in there, Matt, Henry de Bromhead sent a few over. Rachel will obviously be riding the big kids for those. He's an interesting horse because his last few runs have been under a jockey that isn't Rachel Blackmore. The times that he was ridden by Rachel Blackmore before that, which was in the summer last year, so on good ground, he was sent off Fab beaten, and then he was sent off at 5-1, and he was beaten again. You go back to like the year prior to that, I guess, especially again on the good ground, he flicked him a bit of a sequence, and he was in and around Wicklow Brave, the late Wicklow Brave, who is comfortably much better than the 135 rating that Matt's got over in Ireland, and he comes in over here just £6 higher. So very punty because he comes in here with zero form. But that's the way that I'm looking at this sort of race. Like, I'd be happy to have a poke on Matt and Sully Dock against the field, both at big prices, small stakes. I don't back each way in the main. Maybe I'll scoop some up on the big each way term races, but I'll be looking at just like Dutch in the pair of those. Matt and Sully Dock, I'll take a punt on, and I'll hope for the best. Then we've got the mares bumper. So this is what's quite nice about Aintree, that they do have a separate mares bumper. The mares scheme I do like. I like the novice hurdles. I like the fact that they're adding more things in there. The more races they put in there, the better, and the stronger the depth we'll get of that. Obviously, it's nice when they go and take the boys as well, but they need to be good enough to be able to do it. So Eileen Dover skipped Cheltenham to come to Aintree. I just don't know how you oppose Eileen Dover. There's not really much more I can say than that. The thing that will be is there will be some value in there potentially for place money. There'll be something that looks quite nice that's run since the one that Rachel's on, Me Too Please, for Mr. Moore, looked like quite a nice mare. She idled a bit towards the end. She didn't look like she really knew what she was doing that day. So again, she'd need to step up. But there'll be some that will run okay. But Eileen Dover just looks so far clear that you are literally just playing for places. Now, I wouldn't be suggesting backing Eileen Dover because I think she's going to be too short. Maybe look for something at an each way price that could run well. Obviously, we've got the Skelton's horse that ran third, LS Bell. That's the strongest form coming into it, bar what Eileen Dover's done. And Eileen Dover's only done it really in weaker spheres. But we do know that Champion Bumper at Cheltenham did look a 2-horse race. So the fact that LS Bell is best of the rest, I don't know if it just suggests that all the bumpers horses are maybe a little bit behind, but there might be something at a bigger price. I won't be digging in too deeply for it. It'd be a race I'd rather sit back and watch a little bit. There may be some money for something that could be interesting, but like, I would be surprised if Eileen Dover got beat. And if you're backing something like sort of each way at a bigger price just to try and fill the places, like there may be a chance that she could get beat. But I don't know, maybe just sit back and just hope that she is as good as she looks like she could be. Because 127 official rating is for bumpers. That's filth. So that wraps up Thursday. What I'm going to do is, I know Friday, Saturday, we haven't got the final declarations, but I'm just going to carry on waffling while I'm here. Talk through these. I know in those races I haven't really committed to too much stuff. Similar feel for these two races because we haven't got the final decks, but I'm going to ping a light on and we'll go in. Zoom. We're back in the game. Friday. So we've got some horses that are entered on the Thursday that are going to give us clues to the fact they won't be running on the Friday or the Saturday. Buzz, for example. So the Potential Network Handicap Hurdle is over 2.5 miles. A few of these are entered in double races. Master Debonair's now with Harry Fry. There's a couple that are jocked up. Champagne Platinum that I put up for the Potents. He's in the 3.5 mile furlong on the Saturday as well. So where he goes will be interesting, but probably now I'd like to see him drop back in trip. So Champagne Platinum, if they drop him back into this race, the first race on the Friday, interested. Mr. Coffee for Nicky Henderson, I'd be interested if they step him up in trip, albeit maybe a little bit too far for him to go. I'd rather see him go just shy of 2.5. But again, Nicky Henderson with both of those, probably not going to be running them against each other if he fancies one more than the other. Quite a few names that are still in there. I think Solo's semi-interesting, given you can't forget what he did in that Adonis last season, regardless of what he's done since. And you go back to when he ran behind So Royal earlier in the season, he was only sent off 7-2 in that race. Now I know he was well beaten. Maybe the ground was too quick for him then. I just think 139 is getting to the point now where it's a mark where he should be winning soon. So he's semi-interested. And again, Paul Nicholls has been targeting this meet, and we know that from the beginning of the season. So you just wonder, with a horse like this, that they're happy to slowly progress them, maybe, just maybe, this would be where he goes in. But it looks an interesting race. There's plenty of horses in there that, if they ran here, could be worth a mention. But as it stands now, the ones I'd give the short list to would be Nicky Henderson, probably more Champagne Platinum than Mr. Coffee, but Mr. Coffee, I still think he's got mileage in that marker 137, and Solo 139's getting to the point now where he's got to scoot up. And if he doesn't this season, then he'll be one to follow at the beginning of next year. Then we move on to the top Novices hurdle, the 2-mile novice hurdle. Now, this race, there's a lot of horses that are in here that could potentially be going for the 2.5 miler on the Saturday. But the one that I'm really interested in more than anything is Tritonic, because he was ended up in the juvenile, which he's not been declared in. And obviously, a weight for age allowance, he gets £6 in him. He's 145 rated, so that makes him a 150 animal in this sphere on figures and in theory. Now, whether they're going to run him here or not, I don't know. But if they did, Tritonic would more than be worth a second look on a flat track that will suit flat horses, as far as I'm concerned. I think he'll be okay. And I know it's watered ground, but I think ground will suit him better here than it did at Cheltenham. I don't think Cheltenham was ever going to suit him. So he'd have a proper chance in there. And when you take him where I'm mentioning that he's going to get the £6, puts him into the 151 mark. My Drogo is the highest rated horse at 150. I don't think this horse is a 150 horse. Now, he's done very little wrong. He's beaten other horses in here. But I just don't believe that he is as good as that rating suggests. I think he's probably a 140s horse, which could still be good enough to win this. But again, when you talk about that weight for age allowance for Tritonic, if Tritonic came here, I'd be more inclined to want to give him a go. Other ones in this race that could lure me in a little bit. And again, they're horses that I don't know if they're definitely going to come here or not. Dusart could come to this meeting, or he could go to Kelso. If Dusart ran in it, I'd be happy to have my spuds on Dusart. Tritonic, again, with that weight for age allowance, would make me want to have him. But I think Dusart looks a proper horse. The ground at Newbury when he won there was good. So this quicker ground will probably be okay. So I think if Nicky Henderson runs him here, then he's ready to fire. Obviously, if he doesn't, and he thinks that he wants to give him a bit more of an easier comeback, then they'll go to Kelso. I'd quite like to see Third Time Lucky come here. I know My Drogo's in here, so is Third Time Lucky. I wonder if My Drogo might go for the middle trip. But Third Time Lucky, I didn't really see the value in running him at the county at Cheltenham, because if you've got a 143 horse that you think has got a few pounds up his sleeve, and I typically say you want £7 up your sleeve to be winning a handicap at Cheltenham, really this horse was able to run to high 140s. It means that he didn't have very much to find in the Supreme, and I know the pace would have probably suited him more in a county hurdle than it did in the Supreme, but I don't know. I want to see him back in this sort of company and hope that he can settle in with that sort of speed, because I think he'd have a chance of running okay in here. There's other horses as well that I've got the 4-year-old allowance that could come in here. So Hugris for Paul Nicholls, I think he probably will run him here. So we'll just have to see. But he needs to find quite a lot. So Tritonic would be the one that I'm interested in. Dusart, if he ran here, I'd fancy Dusart. I don't know whether the Real Deal's going to come over. He obviously had contaminated feed, so why he had to miss Cheltenham. I don't believe he's as good as his official rating suggests that he is, but we'll see where he goes. Obviously, Belfast Banter did win at Cheltenham. It's difficult to now do it in this sort of company. And then a Gero for Kim Bailey, I think it's half brother or similar to Charbel. That's been really impressive in its runs, and it's got loads of form on really quick ground. So this would be the race that would suit Gero. I think he should be there or thereabouts, but I still think there might be something that's a bit better than him. So if they all lined up as they are now, then I'd be saying that Dusart, Tritonic, I fancy battling out for the win, and I say Gero would be best of the rest. The Skelton pair, I'm not sold, which should be up to winning this sort of grade one, but they could both run well as well. Looks an interesting race nonetheless. Tritonic would be very interesting if he came in with that allowance, but I think he'll be well found. I think he'll be supported. So you wouldn't want to take the punt on him now at the bigger price for the value in case he doesn't line up, but just keep an eye on what the McNeils say, because they might chuck something out on Twitter and the price might collapse accordingly. Obviously, if Dusart then lines up, the price might go back out, but if Dusart didn't come in and Tritonic did, he won't be an 8-1 poke. He'll probably be 2-1 poke, especially if My Drogo, who's the paper fab at the moment, goes for the middle distance race. Tritonic could be real short. So that's the way I'm sort of leaning with it now, but I will leave until final declaration. I'd sacrifice the price than short-term anti-post. And then where I talked about at the very, very beginning of the video, where you're looking for maybe 2-3 decent bets across the week, that race could unfold into a race where there's a decent bet in there. The mild main Novices Chase, 3 mile Novices Chase, but it's basically 3 mile one. This is a race you do want to stay regardless of how this ground's going to be. Chantry House will be coming here. Chantry House, like everything points that he should want this sort of trip. It's really interesting when you go back to his point, because he was behind Monkfish. He unseated. He was going pretty well in that race as well. But if you see the horses that were in that race, you got Monkfish that won the RSA, Fiddler on the Roof that was second the RSA. You got Fury Road in there that could have gone well in the Stayers and didn't really. And then Chantry House is in there as well. So like it was a proper, decent point to point. He's proven himself on this better ground, but I just wonder if it's going to get too quick for him. But then he's got the pace of the middle distances. So Chantry House deserves to be fab, but I couldn't be backing him at it. Fiddler on the Roof ran so well, always there or thereabouts. He could be a muggy each way bet, couldn't he? We know from the entries of some other horses who won't be coming in, like your Phoenix Way, Protectorat. And Rillo, I think, will go for the Handicapped Chase. He's one that I'm going to fancy quite strong in that race if he does go that way. Then you drop a little bit further down, Sporting John, who knows if he'll come here. The big breakaway obviously was beaten by Fiddler on the Roof. And he still looks a really raw horse, isn't he? Like he probably needs a little bit more time on him. When you start to whittle it down and you start to think about the types of ground and stuff that's going to suit horses, one that I'm really annoyed that they ran him at Cheltenham, but one that I'd give a chance to would be If the Cap Fits. I know over fences it went to pot after he beat Fiddler on the Roof on debut, but let's not forget that Fossilast win. He battered him, proper battered him. He's dropped down in his rating now because of the fact that he's not been running so well. Obviously at Cheltenham he did just run in a hurdle race. Whether they decided just to ride him for a spin for fitness before Aintree, I don't know. But you've only got to go back to the last Aintree Festival, albeit 2 years ago, where he won the Stayers Hurdle, the Liverpool Hurdle, and he beat Roxana in there. Apple's Jade was in there as well. That is by far the strongest form. He's a 20-1 poke on the prices that I can see here. He may be bigger, maybe short. I'm just looking at the best odds that show up on Racing Post, whether that's true or not. He would be the one that I'd think is way too big a price. Even at high single figures, I'd give him a bit of a punting squeak. So If the Cap Fits, again, maybe have a little read about. I've not been too savvy with the clues about where horses are going, but he's one that could be tempting to back. And I'll be semi-tempted unless I could find anything negative to suggest that he's not going to come to Aintree. I could be semi-tempted to back him short-term anti-post and just think, you know what? He's way too big a price, because he'll be there or thereabouts. That's absolutely assured. And he loved it round here. So ground will suit. Everything will be fine for If the Cap Fits. So although he lost his way a little bit, and maybe freshening him up was not the best thing to do at Cheltenham, because he won on his reappearance, didn't he? It was after a break when he beat Fiddler on the Roof. I think If the Cap Fits is stupidly overpriced. At the 20s, I can see it. Like I say, he could be bigger. So the way I'd look at the race is Chantry House deserves to be fab. I think Enrillo will go for the Handicap Chase, and I'd like him in there. Others that are in behind you struggle to see them win in the race, probably, and they're priced accordingly. If the Cap Fits is way too big a price, so he'd be one I fancy in the mild May. Go on, the boy. Mars Chase, which is the Melon Chase. Can't believe Altior wasn't even in the entry, so rest in peace, Altior, I guess. He's probably going to be seen at Sandown, I guess, for a swan song. Who knows? Maybe there's some news about why he's not running, but again, I don't know. Looking at this race, right, again, markets form this one quite nicely. Politolog does deserve to be fab. If you look at his form on basically overall, I think he's 12, I want to say 12 from 28 under rules. I can click on Race Post and look. He's got that sort of strike rate, and I think he's 4 from 9 or something like that on good to soft or better ground. So he actually got as good a form, if not better, on the quicker surface, where I think people used to think he needed a bit of cut in the ground. Now, obviously, he was battered by Min that year, but nothing would have got anywhere near Min the season that he did that. He beat Min the time before. That was the first time I think he was wearing a hood, maybe. But he's got the course and distance form. He's like previous champion chase winner last year. Maybe would have won it this year if he hadn't had to miss the festival. Again, like I say, Nichols has got lots of his squad going here for this time. I know that wasn't initially the first thought for this horse, but Politolog does deserve to be fab, and I think potentially the 5-2 could end up looking like a bit of a juicy price. Dashel Drasher, clearly a very good horse. The ground will suit him. Jumping left as well as he has done at Ascot, like coming this way again should only just suit. But those 3 spins at Ascot, like it's a different track to come here. Not saying that he won't like it here, because I think he will, and I think he'll be better going left-handed. But I don't know. I'd probably rather still be siding with Politolog, despite him being a couple of years older. Fakir Doudrey's would be really interesting now that he didn't run the weekend just gone, if they decide to come over here with him. I mentioned before about juveniles when they come over from Cheltenham after the triumph to run in the 4-year-old hurdle over here. He was only beaten a neck by Pentland Hills, and to be fair, I felt like he probably was the best horse that day. So massive box tick for Aintree form, and a massive box tick for better ground as well. He was best of the rest of that Ryanair, wasn't he? So like I hope they bring him over for this, because the middle trip suits him. And then that sways things a little bit, because I don't think he deserved to be favourite with Politolog, but he would deserve to be second fav, I think, behind. You still can't really write off Dashel Drasher. So one of those ends up being a bit of a fiddly race. Master Tommy Tucker, to be fair, we know he's got loads of ability, but too much of a head case for my liking. Like, it looks a nice, decent race, but one that you could fancy a few towards the head of the market. But I think if you were trying to be confident in any of them, you're taking a punt. So that's the way I see that. The Topham Handicapped Chase, I do think that Live, Love, Laugh, I know it's short price. When I say short price, it's like 13-2. And I do think the way that jumped in the national a couple of years back, like, the fences are just no problem. And this trip is much, much more suitable to him. So 145 just looks workable. Haven't looked into the race in any depth. I know this is a bit of a specialist race, so it's not one that I typically get too deep into. I think that previously Tizzards used to have a horse that they used to run in every year and used to just win it every year. But Live, Love, Laugh, I think, just looks the right sort of fav. I would have liked, obviously, to have been able to pick a horse like that out. There was a bigger prize with a bit of value. One that's probably slightly more... No, I can't trust My Way. Anywho, we'll move on to the Sefton Novices Hurdle. So this is a 3-miler. Now, again, I've not really been clued up with what's going on. I think I've seen in Paul Nicholls' stable tour, and I don't think they've said that he's coming here. But Brave Man's Game, I'm surprised that he's fab for the 3-mile race, because there wasn't a lot in that Bannymore to suggest to me that he really wants to be stepping up in trip just yet. I mean, I think he'll make a 3-mile chaser in time, but I wouldn't be rushing him over this trip personally. I think stick him over 2.5. Don't think the division looks very strong for the British runners, so he's miles clear of the rest of that trip. I don't know why you would possibly step him up in trip when the 2.5 milers there for the taking. Just my thoughts on it. And because I'm thinking like that, if he did run in here, I'd want to take him on. He's 9-4 now. I'd want to take him on. Guess you just got starting to question a little bit at the prices who you might want to take him on with. If he doesn't come here, obviously that shortens up the market a little bit. Now, like Cape Gentleman that came over for Emmett Mullins, he ran in the 2-mile race at Kempton. He won the Adonis. Or the Dovecote, sorry. Like, he's a horse that I think the trip will suit him, like stepping up in trip. So he'd be very interesting. And I like the younger horses that have got 2-mile speed to go over 3 miles. So he'd be interested, but 7-1, probably about second fab. If Brave Man's Game doesn't come here, he's probably going to be fab. So that puts me off a little bit. I think really we're looking at a horse to run about 140s to win this. And I suppose the ones that I would like, as it stands, to maybe have a little bit of a punt at bigger prices. Streets of Doyen was one for John McConnell. He needs it like a road, so the quicker ground will suit him. And I thought he ran okay, and that's Albert Bartlett. But again, he's 8-1. Like, he's probably going to be short enough if Brave Man's Game doesn't come here. So fairly well found. I do think Sam Barton for Emma Novell is much better than the 130s horse that he's shown. He, for me, has been crying out for a trip for a while. I don't know whether the ground's really going to suit. So you trust the declaration that if they thought the ground was not a problem, then they'll declare him. If the ground is too much of an issue, they shouldn't run him. So we'll see what they do with that. But I think he is much better than 130s horse. Hemmings likes runners at Aintree, so that's the only caveat with the ground thing, that maybe they'll run him for the sake of running him I don't know, but Sam Barton's still a horse that's a bit on my radar. And then I think when I did look at this before, there was another one at a reasonable price that I gave a tiny bit of a squeak to, but maybe it wasn't. I think it was 2 in an earlier race. But yeah, that's the sort of feel I've got in there. Like, this would be what I want to see final decks. I don't want Brave Man's Game to come. We're sticking in the 2.5 mile because I fancy him there. Like, probably would be a proper chance of winning this race. But yeah, I'd want to see final field, I think, now. And then even the ones I'm talking about in behind, like, they're going to be short enough anyway. So you can sense there that it's probably not going to be that much of a punting race. But if he comes out and the market falls behind him, we'll have a look. Then we've got the conditional jockeys and amateur riders race. This is a 2 mile handicap hurdle. This is a race where I've got a couple that I quite like in. We'll peel down to the first one. So Oakley's one for Philip Hobbs that I give a squeak to in here. 136 rated, hasn't been seen since December last year, where like he was just never really going to be winning. It was a very competitive race. Like, it was a grade 3 handicap hurdle. This isn't that caliber. This is a class 2, which is still possibly on the cusp of what he can do. But if you go back to his best form, penultimate start was at Weatherby, class 3. That was off a 136 as well. Was third behind Adamoir. Like, ran nicely there. That was on better ground. Ran behind Not So Sleepy at Ascot. That was in a class 2 handicap hurdle off of a £4 lower mark, so 132. Ben Jones was claiming 5 off then. It was only 2.5 lengths behind Not So Sleepy, and he was giving him £5. So we know what Not So Sleepy's potentially capable of now. He won before that on good ground. He's come second behind Rouge Vif on good to soft, which we know Rouge Vif's good. Go back to his bumper form behind Ematon, Mr. Fisher. I just think Oakley's got proper back form in there. I think they've left him off since Ascot, which was on heavy ground, which wouldn't have suited the slides. I think they've left him since then with a handicap in the spring in mind, and I think this is it. I don't know what sort of price he'd be. I think he should be a fair price, but I'd fancy Oakley with a bit of a chance. The other one that I'd, again, probably be very well found would be Tomorrow Mystery. I think's got a good chance in there. It's a mare, you can't trust him. She absolutely hacked up at Newbury. Ran the week after when she was well in, 2 to 5 fav, and just ran pants. Now, they said that she made a noise and then she had a wind up after. She's come out and she's won at Kempton on the flat. That was in February, jumpers bumper type scenario, which wouldn't affect her official rating any more than what she's already been served up. She wants better ground. Good ground is what she's been running on and what she's been winning on all the time before. So the watered ground should be fine for her. She'd go there with a favourites chance, but you just can't trust them. So I'd be looking at Tomorrow Mystery as I'd back that. And then I'd be looking at Oakley for like a reasonable sized saver, I think. I think that's the way that I see Friday peeling out. So we're going to move on to Saturday. No light needs to go on. Don't know whether people need to take a break or not, but pause it. It's YouTube, and come back to it later. And we'll try and get this done, wrapped up, so we can get it loaded up. So handicap hurdle grade 3, I talked about this earlier, that some horses will be in the middle distance, some will be in this race. I really, really, really want to see final declarations for this to have a bit of a shape in there. There's a few horses that could be interesting, but there's also a bunch of horses at this trip that I think are at the hilt of their handicap marks of what they can do. The one that jumps out as a horse that missed Cheltenham and I think's got an eye onto here is yet again another Paul Nicholls horse, Southfield Harvest. I didn't particularly think that he was well in to go and win a Attempts, but that's because I think a few were better in there. The fact that he's missed that and a few of those are showing their cards at Cheltenham may have done him a favour, and the fact that he's coming in a bit fresher gives him a little bit of a squeak. But again, I want to see final declarations for this sort of result. I do think that with Southfield Harvest, though, the ground will suit him down to the ground, so there's no excuses why he couldn't run a big race. Then we've got the Mersey Novices Hurdle. This is the 2.5 mile that I was talking about. So potentially, my Drogo could come here, favourite for the 2 mile race. Potentially, Brave Man's Game could come here, favourite for the 3 mile race. It changes the complexities of those. Dusart's entered in here, but Nicky, why would you run him over 2.5 when he's had one spin and it was over 2? Stick him at 2. Cape Gentleman for Elliot Mullins. Again, I said he could go the 3 mile race. I think that's where we should end up, but he could come in here. I pray that Ballyadam gets sent over because I think watered, good ground to good to soft. and this trip would suit him down to the ground. So Henry's obviously got a bit of a squad that's coming over with Rachel on board. Send Ballyadam over, and I'd be tempted to smash into him. We'll see what obviously other horses get declared within here. And it depends where others go, doesn't it? But I think Dusart's 2 mile-ish. The Real Deal, I'm not even sold on anyway whether he's going to come over. Brave Man's Game should come here, but if Paul Nicholls decides to be that way inclined and goes for the 3 mile race, it really does just leave Ballyadam stood here as an almost like rock solid looking horse in here. The thing is, we don't know how it's going to fall apart. So we could end up with a really deep race. We could have Ballyadam in here, Brave Man's Game, Cape Gentleman, Dusart, My Drogo could come here as well. Like, we could have some really nice horses in here, or it could just fall apart and there could be hardly anything. So if we go by the aspect that they're all coming in and all the big kids are, I'd still think that Brave Man's Game is the one to beat. Ballyadam would be my biggest danger of all of those ones. Dusart I do like, but I think he'd be better at 2. If we decide that the race might peel back a little bit and might calm down, there's a couple of much bigger prices that are just worth a mention now. So Paul Nicholls has got Lucky One. He's not really aptly named because he's not really a lucky one. He's had just a couple of wins, I think. But the whole Brave Man's Game thing, right? I'm not saying that they're going to run him over 3 miles because they think Lucky One's a better horse at the middle trip, but maybe they think that, you know, like, he is a worthy horse to run a bit of a race in there. Now, he's had a couple of wins where he's looked proper decent. So there was I think it was a 130-ish racing post rating, and then his penultimate start, Wincanton, was a 144 racing post rating. Admittedly, he came on dead ground, but I don't think the ground is that much of a key to him. Well behind My Drogo after, but they couldn't really explain why the performance was so bad. I would suggest Flu Jab, but who knows? He's 25s, could be overpriced in a race that could cut up, and there'll be places up for grabs. The other one that, again, is about 20 to 1, could be overpriced, and I actually think he is overpriced, is Clandinabo Lad. That obviously was behind My Drogo at Ascot when he was sent off Fab, and he was giving My Drogo £5. Now, I know he was beaten, but you take all of that into consideration. He gave him £5. He was beaten 2 3/4 lengths. My Drogo is a 7 to 2 poke on the tissue now. Clandinabo Lad is a 20 to 1 poke now. So there's just a price discrepancy there, and I think people will latch onto that. So Clandinabo Lad and Lucky One are 2 at bigger prices if this race does cut up, because it's the middle trip one, it might. If we get the likes of Ballyadam, Brave Man's Game, Cape Gentleman, Dusart all coming in here, then those 2 shouldn't be any good. But if the race does cut up, as I suspect it will, there's places up for grabs, and I can see both of those running well at big prices, probably without winning if one of those big kids come in. Then we've got the 2 mile Novices Chase. Shishkin wins. Literally no point saying anything else. Then we've got the Liverpool Hurdle, the Stairs Hurdle, 3 mile. This is going to be a proper race. The way I kind of see it is that Paisley should like Aintree. So Paisley's got a chance. I was just disappointed with him at Cheltenham. Like, there was no excuses. And I touched on it right at the start of the season when I put him up on Ante-Up, that, like, he's the sort of horse that if he's going to go and do stuff this season, he should have been winning first up at Newbury. And the fact that he didn't, and the fact that he's now been beaten at Cheltenham just makes me worry about him a slight bit. Roxana, this trip should suit. We talked about her with If the Cap Fits. Now, like I say, if you fancy Roxana to be winning this, and you look at If the Cap Fits being a 20 to 1 poke in that Mildmay Chase, if the Cap Fits even runs well, that's going to make Roxana look even better. But you'd expect that If the Cap Fits should be winning that Mildmay Novices Chase. I know it's a different discipline. I know it's 2 years later, but to sort of frank that back form for Roxana. So again, If the Cap Fits looks way too big a price than me. Time Hill's the one though. Slightly, I said in a video after when we did like a mid-season review, when Dickie Johnson got beat at Ascot, like the way that he swore after the line, because it's uncharacteristic for him. It wasn't a bad ride. He didn't do anything wrong. He was just fuming, I think, because he just got nabbed on the line by a horse that he thought he'd beaten. It was almost like, not desperation, but it was like disappointment or something. And I felt like that. I said it in a couple of videos, and I said it to Darryl a few times, that I think he wanted to retire. I think he's going to retire this season, is what I said. I think he wants to go out on a bang. Now, obviously, Time Hill didn't run at Cheltenham because of an injury. Dickie Johnson has now come out since and retired. I feel like partly he wanted to just retire on the horse. He was fuming about Time Hill at Cheltenham last year, isn't he, when he got him beat there. Then he goes and does that at Ascot. I just don't know. I feel like if he'd have won that race at Ascot at Christmas, we could have seen Dickie Johnson retire mid-season. That's how I feel, and that's why I think he reacted the way that he did. Because in all the years I've watched him ride, he's never done that before. and it wasn't a bad ride in the slightest. It was a great ride, and he just got beaten by a better horse on the day. So partly with Time Hill, you could have thought, oh, maybe Dickie Johnson might have stayed for like a swan song sort of thing. But I just feel like now that he's just put himself through so much. If he decided to ride to Time Hill and Time Hill got beat again, like maybe he postponed it after the Albert Bartlett, maybe postponed it after the Christmas thing. I just think that maybe he just thinks almost like handing over the guard. But I think Time Hill's got a proper chance here. The little muscle injury that he had to stop him at Cheltenham shouldn't stop him here. Just looks like it's going to be a really, really nice race, isn't it? But the Paisley Time Hill, we want to see the clash again. The run from the last to the finish line should suit Paisley more than it would suit Time Hill. I think that Paisley takes a bit of time to be stoked up. And I do think Paisley will be suited here. Pretty much looks a match between the two of them, doesn't it? Obviously, I talked about if the cap fits going in that Mildmay Novices Chase. He's a 20-1 poke in this race because they ran him in the Stayers Hurdle if they decide to do it again. I don't know why you would, because you've got his novice status for this season and this season only, and he's like lost it right at the start of the season in that first run. Now, I know his jumping wasn't particularly great in some of those other races, but I still think they should go Mildmay with him. But he could come in here. If he did, I wouldn't give him any chance at all. So hopefully if the cap goes Mildmay, we can have a little bit on him. Paisley, Time Hill would be the match for me. Siderburn ran a lot better than I expected at Cheltenham, but I don't know. I feel like the sensible bet now would just be to accept that Paisley's past his best and Time Hill could be the new kid on the block, and hopefully he is, and hopefully he gets it done. They're both short enough prices for me to say that I won't probably be having a bet in the race. And there's a Betway Handicapped Chase. This is 3 mile 1. Same distance as that Mildmay Novices Chase. This is the handicap that Enrillo is going to win. Now, this horse was a horse to follow for me at the start of the season. Fairly much done what I was sort of expecting. Like, he's probably not going to be up to grade 1 class, although they'll test him. And I hoped he would be good enough. But he's got a bit of an attitude. He's got he's a bit of a dog, really. And those two starts at the beginning of the season, they both came on quick ground, which he's going to get back onto now. He's winning at Newbury in February, where he beat Hold the Note. Now, that's just as much of a dog as he is. If you watch the race back, they both were just like, neither of us can be asked to win. But, you know, timing-wise, he has had his head in front on more than enough occasions to suggest that as much of a dog he is, he doesn't want to get beat. I think 143 underestimates, so I still think this is a 150s horse, like, with ease. So I think he's got at least £7 up his sleeve. That's good enough for me on ground that will suit a track. Distance, everything will be in his favour. I fancy Enrillo quite strong. He'd be my strongest handicap fancy of the week, to be honest. Then the actual Grand National itself, do your own thing, to be honest with you. It's absolute punt in it. I've backed Burrows, Saint and Milan Native when the weights came out. One that I'll be topping up with is Far Class. I thought he ran really, really well at Cheltenham behind the shunter, who was well in and obviously on that big pot. Step up in Triple Suit. We know Tiger Roll won a triumph for them when it came here. I think Jack Kennedy's already booked to ride it. I think 33s is probably too big. Take a bit of the punt on 5 Class. I know he's not jumping the fences, but he'd be the only one that I'll be adding to my portfolio. Unless, of course, Bet365 do their little money back in your back each way, then I'll just be getting all the accounts up again, speaking to my family and asking to stick a load of bets on, because you can make some real nice bits on there. But yeah, also, if Bet365 do that, which I'm not suggesting they are definitely going to do, I haven't seen anything about with it, you can boost the horse if you reduce the places. So when Tiger Roll was 5-1 to win the Grand National, if you reduced it to 2 places, you got 7-1 about him. And the concession that Bet365 used to do, I don't know if they're doing this yet, hopefully they will, is that you get your half of your stake back. So you get the each way part of it back, the place part. So basically, you're getting 7-1 about it. So if you fancy Cloth Cap because the ground's a bit quicker, you might be able to boost him up to 6-7-1 by sniffing those each way bits, because you get a bit back. So worth thinking about. Then we got the bumper. Nice bumper historically. I mean, the last year we missed it, which was devastating more than anything, because it gave us no clues into the novice hurdlers. But I think we didn't really miss out on anything, to be honest, given how pants the novice hurdlers from the UK were this year. Nappers Hill and Stage Star ran against each other. They're both Paul Nichols. Nappers Hill, I see no reason why the form should be reversed round. He's got Meg on board, whether he wants to go and get her a nice Cheltenham winner, a nice Aintree Festival winner. I feel like that's the way, as opposed to her being the second string because Harry Cobham's not on board. So Nappers Hill would be the one that I still do quite like. I just think it'll probably be priced accordingly. There might be something else in there that I like, but I'd rather see what the final declarations were for the bumper. Will be one to pay close attention to for the season next year. Also watching for horses that stay on that get beat in these bumpers, because they tend to they tend to be a bit underrated when it goes to novice hurdles or maiden hurdles next season. And normally a few of them in behind will win races fairly early on, sort of pre-Christmas. It's just well worth watching the race for that reason, and that reason only. You get some horses, maybe some hard luck stories, didn't like the ground or whatever they were, but you get some eye catchers in behind that are worth sticking on your watch list for next year. So that wraps up Aintree preview, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Yeah, plenty that I could like in there. There'll be a couple of strong bets, I think, but we'll just have to see what prices are when we get to the day. My tactic for this year at Aintree is just to try and be as select as possible. Let some of these races go. Admittedly, you might be leaving winners behind, but you shouldn't be betting in some of them. They look really competitive. If you do want to go bullish about them, then obviously just gamble responsibly. Do your own thing. Trust your own judgment more than you trust anybody else's. Obviously, it's good to listen to my bits. It's good to listen to all the other content that's out there because it is all about opinions, and someone might see things in a slightly different way that helps. Someone might just bolster your opinions to prove that what you're thinking was the right thing in the first place. But whatever you do, be lucky, and I will see you after Aintree for Punchestown.